Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Where Do We Go From Here? It's Imran Khan. I'm actually super excited today to have Anil Grovor joining me. He's a true Renaissance man, so to speak, someone that has a wealth of experience as an entrepreneur, as a C-suite coach, and amongst many, many other things. So, Anil, thank you so much for joining me here today. I really appreciate it. So if it's okay with you, Anil, do you want to take a couple of minutes to quickly describe some of the work that you're doing? Tell us a little bit about your company. I'm sure the folks at home would love to hear more.
Sure. Uh, no, I wouldn't even describe it as a company because we are a global consortium. We are Atmatva. Atmatva in Sanskrit means essence.
Mm-hmm.
And the inspiration to set this up was several years ago, I discovered in my own roles when I was heading the Motorola Computer Group, as well as did many startups, that the leadership we need in the world today needs to have an inner equanimity and needs to fully engage with the world outside and sense and respond. And I didn't find that leadership at C-suite level in the largest Fortune 100 companies, many of them, or the startups. And that's what led me to set this up. As we speak, today, Atmatva is actually 6 entities,
Mm-hmm.
and they're all interconnected. There's an Atmatva Foundation, which is a non-profit with a mission to touch 1 billion lives and transform health and education coming from the future. There's Atmatva Consulting, which works in systemic coaching, transforming leadership and businesses.
Mm-hmm.
There is Atmatva as a wisdom collaborative, and we have presence around the world, North America, Europe, India, and Asia Pacific. And we can work with any company in all locations, at any geography and any level. We are also having an animation, gaming, and virtual reality story with one of our entities called Indica Studios. We are also having an arts platform which brings together colors and sounds and arts and artists and expressive arts. We call it Atmatva Namaha.
Mm-hmm.
And all of this is held together in a way where we work in this space. And Imran, when you brought me in today, how do there is no post-corona world. There is only a co-corona world.
Right.
How do we do a metamorphosis of self, homes, teams, leadership, organizations, communities, society, nation, and planet? And we are committed as Atmatva to do that.
This is one of the reasons why I was so excited when Shrikant made the introduction and I saw the work that you were doing, is that I really do see you at the nexus point of a lot of what the future will need, right? Or like you said, not really the future, this co-corona world. So with that in mind, I'm actually really curious to get your perspective as to what you've seen as the big impact of corona on some of these nexus points that you're talking about, particularly around leadership and coaching at this very senior level. I'm really curious to get your perspective.
I'll tell you a little story there. 9th of March, I came back from my travels, and a couple of days before that, I was in a single room with 5,000 foreigners. The following week, 19th of March, as I was, and I'd been coaching people in US, Canada, Brazil, Peru, Europe, and India. And there was this person I was coaching who was a global leader. 19th of March morning, I had his last session and he messaged me saying, Anil, we need to postpone our session. And I said, why? What happened? He said, my colleague, who was the chief information officer of a multi-billion-dollar company, passed away from a heart attack this morning at the age of 53. He was responsible of moving everything to work from home.
Oh, wow.
Over the next 2 weeks, I had to coach people in Boston, New York, Latin America, Europe, Sweden, who had been this person's colleague for 25 years, who couldn't believe this person can actually die like this.
Wow.
That made me completely reconfigure what I was doing. By 2nd April in my board meeting, I had reconfigured the whole architecture of Atmatva, because I became very clear that while people were tracking the corona numbers like a cricket score and panicking, it was very clear to me we are at a very, very unique inflection point. And these are some of these top leaders with 30 to 40 years of experience have told me, Anil, what did not change for 25 years, what would not have changed for the next 25 years, changed in 25 hours of our work from home.
Wow.
And that's why I think the world has to stop tracking numbers and panicking. The world has to realize that we are already in a co-corona world. And they have to survive 2020. But if they don't reinvent themselves in 2021, they will not be around as businesses and leaders in 2022.
And what have you seen are some of the things that really great leaders have done to install that reinvention, to really move forward into this idea of reinvention?
So there are 2 or 3 examples I can give there. So one of the very large companies I work with, they made it very clear early on, several months ago. The CEO made it clear worldwide that even in 2025, only 25% of our workforce, and not even the same workforce, will work from office.
Mm-hmm.
They already put in place mechanisms to actually respond to this new challenge. And I really admire, because I coach many of the CEOs around the world, I admire, even in midst of this dramatic challenge to their business, how they responded.
Mm-hmm.
Another story I was really influenced about 3 months ago, there is the CEO of a company which has 4 different verticals. How did they respond? They realized that while the world has moved to Zoom, there are aspects that cannot be replaced, which are the face-to-face. So what did they do? Months ago, they said, all of you can go in your hometowns and work from your hometowns. You can even leave your homes that you have taken in the metro. You come back once for 1 week. All people in one particular vertical will come. The company arranges for their stay in a service apartment in a safe space, office working. Obviously, if it's 1/4 the people, there's a social distancing possible in both places.
Mm-hmm.
They co-create. And then they go back 3 weeks and work from their villages and their towns and their homes. And I thought that was brilliant adaptation to this need to do both. And there are many stories like this, but I'll take a pause there. I think we are already in a space where we have to stop reacting to the millions of deaths and millions of infections and start seeing that we can transcend this, not by trying to fight it, but see that how we live with it, like we live with heart disease or diabetes or dengue or other things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think that's super interesting of a perspective, because I think much of at least the reaction I've experienced, both here in Germany and through some of my family in the US, has been a lot of fear and frustration and, looking inward versus thinking about, well, how do we create a world in which we step forward and fold this into our daily lives? Very interesting perspective. This leads me to think, now that you're seeing some of this reinvention happening, that you're seeing how companies are starting to think about the bright, new morning, let's say, what are some of these short-term, long-term consequences of what's happened? How do you think businesses are going to be behaving, and specifically CEOs and C-suite folks are going to be behaving and acting for the next couple of years?
That's a very good question. So first, I think the smart CEOs are seeing the interconnection of everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Even if one person in the world has corona, in the connected global world we live in, it'll spread fast. If people don't see that connection between human beings and the environment today, I don't know when they will. And
Right.
smart CEOs see this. The smart CEOs are also, partly because of the geopolitical developments that are happening in the world, and partly because of the supply chain disruption that happened because of corona, are completely reinventing So I'm seeing be global, but be hyper local also.
Mm-hmm.
And ensure that, and that's having very interesting consequences. So in the US, in Europe, in many countries, in India, and I'm seeing that these trends are where you have to be connected and you have to be self-reliant at the same time. And some of the work I've done with Barry Johnson's polarity thinking last 40 years has been very useful in this. We have to co-hold this. We
Mm-hmm.
cannot shrink into our own shells, because that's violating the very interconnection. And at the same time, we cannot be as naive about how supply chains work, especially because we are living in a world, and the next 2 years, I don't think anyone who is just thinking maybe magically some vaccine will come and we'll be all fine. We are never going back to the old world. It's like the typewriters to the computer transition that happened in the mid 80s. The businesses and the technology and the society is never going back to what it was before March 2020. And I think it's for us to shape this future together, and smart CEOs are doing that.
This is like, couldn't be a better transition, because it really leads me to the question, the most important question. Well, where do you think that we should go from here, right? What's your advice to these CEOs that are now starting to see how, the environment and business is connected, that starting to see that, we have to work in a world in which this is something that's just a part of daily life. Like, what would be your advice? What would be the 1 to 2 things that you would really like to, put out there for the folks that are watching that might be our potential future CEOs of companies? I'm really curious.
I'll expand this. I'll say this applies to every human being alive. Integral well-being. I've seen people in their 30s, 40s, 50s, and 60s die. I've seen people in their 90s recover from COVID.
Right.
If you're not even alive, then what will you do in business? So I think there is no switch we have of putting off our thoughts and saying, okay, now I will not panic. I will not fear. So whatever people used to do, let me work and earn for 60 years and then I will think about spirituality. I think people have to realize, why are people in 30s and 40s and 50s dying? Because it's the stress and the response to that. So I coined a term last October. I said the world needs a new CPR. What is CPR? Congruence, presence, resilience. In this co-corona world, that's even more important. So in May of this year, coincident with the 25 years of International Coaching Week and the ICF launch, I launched something called Stress to Resilience. Unless your thoughts, your feelings, and your actions and your words are aligned, which is congruence, unless you can be in the here and now, which is presence, and unless you can learn to quickly come back in coherence before everything dissolves in chaos again, which is resilience. And I think you cannot lead to resilience by some competence. It's a capacity you have to develop within it. So the CEOs have to stop working on trainings and competency frameworks. They have to build this capacity of congruence, presence, and resilience, which is they have to humanize self, they have to humanize teams, they have to humanize the culture, and they have to humanize the business. If they don't start with self, and if they don't take it all the way to the business reinvention, the metamorphosis is not complete. The caterpillar has to turn into a butterfly or it dies.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. I had this really incredible management professor at Columbia for business school, a gentleman named Ralph Bigadike. And he always used to say that, so he was a managing director at Unilever for many years. And he always said that much like anything in the world, businesses are like organic systems, right? So if something is off in one part of the system, it impacts other parts of the system, right? That makes total sense. And I completely see that from what you're saying.
So just to build on that, Imran, one line more. So I'm a systemic coach. What does that mean?
Mm-hmm.
First, I tell people, if you are unwilling to go on at least 9 months to 1 year journey, don't even come to me, because a baby takes 9 months to be born. Most CEOs are saying, let's put 9 women together and have a baby born in 1 month. I'm sorry, that's not going to happen.
Right.
Second, it starts with self. If they, I don't take on clients if the CEO themselves are not ready to change and be part of the change. I tell them, don't ask me to go fix your team. It starts with you.
Mm-hmm.
And the third very important is, it is always in action learning. We don't need knowledge. The journey is from head to heart, knowledge to wisdom, which comes through lived experience. So the working in one-to-one, working in the collective, and action learning, where you put in practice the awareness you have. All of us know what needs to be done, but we fail in creating new habits. And unless CEOs can do it over 9 to 12 months, the next 9 months, if they don't do it, financial year 2021, 2022 is not going to fly for them in the new world.
Yep, it makes total sense to me. I think that this leadership down approach is something that, you know, in some of my other conversations I've even had on this series, it's been really interesting to examine, particularly with some of the countries who've managed the pandemic a bit better than others. So one of the gentlemen I spoke with said, it's really interesting to note that the countries that are led by women
Yes.
are seeing, you know, very different kind of results than the countries that are led by men. And what does that mean in terms of the CEO? What does that mean in terms of the integrated well-being, the wholeness? I'm curious, what do you think?
Why is New Zealand so successful?
Right.
Or even Germany, essentially the feminine leadership. We have to get beyond this macro, going to change the world, to the empathetic listening,
Right.
to seeing the whole. And that comes with the feminine. It's not about gender. It's about each of us integrating the masculine and feminine within us. And I see women leaders who are actually more masculine and sometimes, and I see men leaders who are more feminine sometimes. But yes, in general, the women leaders naturally tend to be able to do this simply because of the feminine that they don't deny.
This is also true in India, right? In Kerala. Is that not true? The state of Kerala has seen quite a bit of success in terms of their containment strategy, their ability to deal with the crisis. Am I correct?
I'm very aware of the micro level, state level things here. In general, I stay away from the political.
Of course.
I think leadership here, going beyond the state level, we have to see. Again, it comes to polarity thinking. There is no one in a space like this. You have to sense and respond. So
Right.
whether it is a state or a nation, those who have sensed and responded to what is emergent, they've done much better than who went with, this is it, and I'm telling you, this is the way we'll do it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I want to first thank you again for so much for your time. I really appreciate all the insights, the thoughts you've shared around your experience that you've had with working with leaders for the last countless number of years. It's been very much appreciated. This is an incredible conversation, and I bet it could go on for hours, but I just wanted to thank you so much for being on the show. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Imran. Thank you for inviting me.
I'll talk to you soon. Ciao.